Okay, everyone, this is Ernie Svensson, and today's session is going to be about Adobe Acrobat. So we talked last time about Adobe Reader, the free program that lets you view PDFs and work with them in certain basic ways. And we talked about the fact that PDFs are in widespread use and that basically PDFs are akin to digital paper. And so they're very useful for lawyers who want to be paperless because they are what replaces paper. So the more you know how to use PDFs, the better off you are. Now, the thing about PDFs is they're actually more than just digital paper, because you can, as we talked about last time, attach files to a PDF. And I just showed you that there were files attached to that PDF. I didn't talk to you about how that happens, but that's something that you need Adobe Acrobat to do, which is what we're going to talk about today. And another thing that you can do with PDFs is you can embed video and audio into a PDF. So this is an example of a PDF which has embedded video in it. And so what happened was, it was a case I was involved in called the Redacted case. I represented a t-shirt shop, and the NFL was threatening to sue based on the use of the phrase "Who Dat" in a t-shirt, and people got up in arms. This is right before the Saints went to the Super Bowl in 2009, and so there were all these news reports about how the phrase "Who Dat" had actually been in the public domain for a really long time. So I wanted to capture some of those news reports just in case I could somehow use them in trial or wherever, and so I screen captured the video and then was able to embed that video into a screenshot of the website where the video was. So what I basically was doing was taking the screenshot of the website, which wouldn't have the video as part of it, and then capturing the video and then embedding it into a PDF. And so if you click on this button here, oh, well, I don't have Flash installed. So you have to have Flash installed on your computer for you to be able to view the video, because it converts it to Flash. So I haven't done that, so I can't watch this video. But if I had Flash installed, which I will do as soon as this session is over, then when you click on this button, you can watch the video and listen to it and so forth. So PDFs really are more than just digital paper, because they allow you to embed the video, embed the audio, attach other files, and do a number of other things. So we talked last time about the key skills for working on PDFs, and we talked about the basic skills being zooming in on text, quickly jumping to a page. The things that are underlined are things you can only do in Adobe Acrobat, but these are sort of the key skills. And we talked about sticky notes and marginalia, because those are things you can do with just the free Adobe Reader program. Now, one thing that's important to understand is that clients are now becoming wary and mindful of whether lawyers are adept at using PDFs. So there is an in-house lawyer at Key, not the general counsel, but an in-house lawyer named Casey Flaherty, who has developed a set of tests for his outside counsel to see if they are competent with technology. And so he's been running this audit where he checks in with firms and says, okay, here's some skills that I expect you to be able to do, things like working on Word documents, working on Excel, working with Microsoft Outlook. But he also has a session on PDFs, and he says that the average audit should take about an hour, but most firms that he interviews take about 5 hours, and none of them have passed, or at least none of them had passed up until then. His audit, as it relates to PDFs, covers printing the PDF, knowing how to use Acrobat, extracting pages, and searching, and so forth. So we covered searching last time. But the main thing to understand about this is part of the ABA's rule on lawyers maintaining competence with relevant technology. PDFs are relevant technology, and lawyers need to understand how to use PDFs. So we've talked about the free reader program and the preferences and so forth. But what we're going to talk about today is Adobe Acrobat. So Adobe Acrobat is something that I cover in my book called Adobe Acrobat in 1 Hour for Lawyers, and it's broken down into basically two sections. The first section dealing with basic skills, which involves setting preferences and so forth. And we covered most of those last time, but one of the preferences that we didn't cover that you would want to enable once you start using Adobe Acrobat is an option to automatically copy any selected text into the highlight. So, for example, if I choose the highlighter tool and I highlight this area here, if you see when I hover over it, the pop-up is showing you that it's copied that text. And we can see this as well if we go over to the comments list, and you see that this comment here has copied all of that text into the comment. That's not an option that you had with the free Adobe Reader. So this is one that if you have Acrobat, you're going to want to enable this one. Single key accelerators we talked about last time, and the ability to switch quickly between the hand tool, which if you want to point at something, or the underlining tool if you want to highlight text, or the stamp tool if you want to stamp something. So being able to jump between selecting, highlighting, and hand and so forth is useful. So that's the single key accelerator. We also talked last time about viewing PDFs. We talked about rotation and how you can take a PDF and rotate a single page, and you would go to the View menu, let's say, go to Rotate View, and you'd say hit counterclockwise. And what happens is it's making all of the pages in the PDF rotate clockwise. So that's if you have the free reader. Now, if you have the Acrobat, you can call up this dialog box. The shortcut is Shift-Command-R, and then from there you decide which pages you want to do, all of them, just certain pages. So you can selectively rotate just certain pages in Acrobat and then save that view, which is very useful because a lot of times people will send you a PDF and it has just one page that for some reason, which I'm sure they're not aware of, is misrotated, and that gives you the opportunity to rotate it back. We talked about the difference between single page scrolling and using these things of here. We talked about zoom, we talked about the loop tool, all of these things we talked about. So we don't need to talk about viewing PDFs. Everything that was covered with the free reader would be applicable to Acrobat. Now, we talked about page navigation as well, that you can use these toolbar buttons. You can set up the toolbars to have those things if you want. And so that's basically something you should be very familiar with because you want to be able to navigate quickly. We talked about the interface and the overview of the menus and the toolbars, and we talked about the task pane. And in Acrobat, you have a little more leeway as to which tools you add here. That's really something that's a preference for you to do. You need to learn that when you are looking at this view here under the tools and comments, you can drop down and get additional options. This is actually in version, this is a screenshot of Acrobat 10. It would look a little different in Acrobat 11. And so you can edit the quick tools menu. We talked about all that. So let's talk now about creating PDFs. This is something that you can't do with Adobe Reader. So if you have a Word document, an Excel document, any kind of Microsoft Office document, but really any document at all that's in another application, if you have Adobe Acrobat installed on your computer, you have the option of making what would become the print output of that document if you were to physically print it to a printer. You can make that into a PDF. And so on a PC, it's called PDF Creator. And if you have Microsoft Word or any of the Office documents, it installs a tab called the PDF Creators tab, and you can go in here and do things like create a PDF, create and attach it to an email, do a mail merge, and so forth. But basically, you're usually going to do the create PDF, and that's where it just takes the output, makes it into a PDF. Another option is, and this is what used to be the case in older versions of Acrobat, is they had a thing called print to PDF. Now, the difference between using PDF Creator today when it's available and the print to PDF version, if you that's still available, which it usually is that it takes a little longer, and if you have hyperlinks in your Word document, it will strip out some of that stuff. So if you're using Microsoft Word and you create styles, and so your document has structure and all the headings are at one level and the subheadings are at similar levels as subheadings, all that structure can be passed and become bookmarks that look structured like these bookmarks over here if you use the PDF Creator tool. If you don't and you use the Print to PDF, that will get stripped out. On the Mac, the function is basically you save as a PDF, and that function is there on every Mac regardless of whether you have Adobe Acrobat installed or not. So it's one example of where Mac users can create PDFs even if they don't have the full version of Adobe Acrobat. So those are some of the basic things. We talk about printing current page. Sometimes you just want a current page, and you shouldn't just always default to having it print all the pages or creating all the pages into a PDF. You can also have Adobe Acrobat convert files to PDF. You can scan it in. You can combine several files into a single PDF. You do that from the File menu. It would be File, Create, PDF from, combines files into a single PDF. And when you do that, those files that you're going to glom together and to make into one PDF, those can be separate PDF files, or those can be PDF files and some Word files, some Excel files, or just Word files. So it will take all those files, whatever they are, and if they're not PDFs, it will convert them into PDFs as it runs that function. So that's one thing, and you can also web capture. You can create PDFs from an email program. So if you have a Microsoft Outlook or Lotus Notes, which is less popular, but if you have Microsoft Outlook, you can select a range of emails and have Adobe PDF create those into those emails into a PDF. The attachments will carry over, and it's very useful. So there's lots of ways to create PDFs. It's important to know how to do that. That's absolutely a critical skill for anybody who has Acrobat. It comes up all the time, and you should consider yourself being tested on that at all times. So that's the kind of thing you should just learn. There's times when you want to examine document security, and we talked about this in the last session, and we pointed out that when you look at the document security for a document with Adobe Reader, it'll show that changing the document isn't allowed, and that page extraction, I think, is not allowed. And that's just because Reader doesn't let you do that stuff. So if we were to look at the document security for this document that I'm showing you, everything is allowed, so there's no security. You could, if you wanted to, using Adobe Acrobat, say, I want there to be a password on this document, and it would say, okay, then you have to have a password to open the document. That's one password. Or you could have a password that would restrict what you could do with it, such as you can only print low resolution, or you can print high resolution. And then these changes are the ones that you saw over here. Those kinds of changes would be governed there. So you could set security to open the document, and that means somebody would have to have the password to open the PDF. Or you could say, well, like, anyone can open it, but they can't do these things, or both of those things together. So you create the password, and then it governs, those kinds of things. That can be useful if you're sending a PDF or a document to somebody, and it's your client, and you're afraid that somebody in their office who has rights or who has access to the computer might view it. You could say, hey, I'm sending you this document. Here's the password, and when you get it, open it up. So then only they could open up that document, that PDF. So that's examining PDFs. Now, here's another very important skill or set of skills when dealing with PDFs. Rearranging the pages in a PDF. So right now we're in the bookmark view over here, which we covered last time. If you want to switch to the pages view, you click on this icon up here, and now it's showing you all these page thumbnails. And if you wanted to move one to a different location, you would just drag it over to the new location, and you can rearrange single pages, or you could select multiple pages and drag them around. It's kind of a little tricky to work with it that way. You might even want to make the the thumbnails bigger so you can see what's on them. So there's some options there about how you can set the view. It's not as easy to do this, to rearrange a lot of pages this way. So if you knew you were going to have this problem before you scanned everything in or created the PDF, you might want to fix the problem then. But that is how you rearrange pages most easily. You can also insert a single page or a group of pages into a certain place in a PDF. That's easy to do. You can, now I will say that all of these choices, you can get to them from the Tools menu, from the Pages submenu, and then here's where you would be doing things like inserting, combining, replacing, extracting, rotating. So everything that we're doing is under the Tools menu over here, and it's under the Pages area. So you can also create a PDF from a blank page. You can pull pages out, which is called extracting. So if I need to send someone just 2 or 3 pages from a PDF, I can extract those pages, and basically that's just this extract tool over here. You would tell it which range of pages you wanted, and it would pull those pages out and create a new PDF. You can delete pages, replace pages, rotate, crop, and also split pages. Splitting pages is a useful feature for lawyers, and here's why. Now, the function of splitting a PDF lets you split by several criteria. One, you can split by the number of pages, so you can say every 10 pages make a new PDF. And it's not going to split the current PDF. What it's going to do is create new PDFs based on this criteria. So the PDF you're working from is going to stay the same, but it's going to create new PDFs based on these criteria. It'll say, let's say you say every 10 pages based on how big the file size is, or top-level bookmarks. And so top-level bookmarks is key for reasons we'll talk about in a second, but that's basically saying everything that's at the root level is a top-level bookmark, and it would create a new PDF with the page starting at that bookmark until the page before the next top-level bookmark. So that's something useful, very, very useful for lawyers. And you can also add headers and footers to a PDF, which is useful if you forgot to number the pages of a PDF that you created in Word, and then you go, oh, I need to make them have page numbers. You could quickly add footers and accomplish the same thing inside of Acrobat. So that basically covers what I consider to be the basic skills of working with PDFs. Mostly that's viewing them, setting up your preferences, navigating, creating PDFs, and so forth. So now we get to what are considered intermediate skills. And here is where you learn how to create bookmarks. And bookmarks are very easy to create. Basically, you can come up here and say new bookmark, and wherever it is, it'll pop down a new thing. You give it a name, and then you hit enter, and then now that bookmark is there. And if I were to click up here, it takes me away. If I click here, I'm back to that bookmark. And I'm just going to right-click and then hit delete. So I can delete that bookmark very easily as well. So creating bookmarks is super, super useful for lawyers, because basically as you're dealing with a PDF or any kind of document, if you want to quickly just put like a sticky note that says this page is important to me, you can create a bookmark that way. So let's take a look at an example of something that would be how lawyers might actually use a bookmark. Let's find a motion to dismiss. Okay, let's open this document up. Now this document already has its bookmarks, so we're going to pretend it doesn't have the bookmarks and delete them. So if I get a motion to dismiss with memo from opposing counsel, I want to understand the structure of the document and then kind of have sort of a nice little table of contents for this document. I need to create that myself because opposing counsel apparently didn't use Word and use the PDF creator to create the structure. So I'm left without any bookmarks whatsoever. Hold on a second. So I'm left without any bookmarks whatsoever. So what I need to do is I could go up here and hit New Bookmark, and then say memo in support and type that, and then I could say, okay, let me go down to the next place. Oh, this is the legal standard. I could go up here, but I'm going to do the Control or Command B, which is the keyboard shortcut. So I'm going to hit Control or Command B. It gives me this, and I'll say legal standard, and that's actually subpart 1. So I'll type in there, hit a space. I'll go to the next area, that's count 2. I'll hit shortcut, count 1. And that's the same page, so I'm just going to hit for count 3, count 2, 3, and so forth. So I can go through and do this, and then I can hit the conclusion. Okay, so this is very tedious. This is not the way you would want to bookmark a PDF if you knew the better way. And there is a better way, so I'm going to show you what the better way is. And this is something you definitely want to remember. And this is on the one-page shortcut of keyboard shortcuts, the one-page cheat sheet. So the way you do it is you get the Select tool. So that would be V. And then you hit Command B. So all I did was select what I wanted to be the bookmark and hit Command B, and it knew, well, when you create that bookmark, take what was in the selected text and make that the name of the bookmark. So I'm going to do the same thing here. Select, Command B. Select, Command B, or Control B if you're on a Windows computer. Select, B. Select, modifier shortcut B. So now I have all these bookmarks. They're all at the same level, when in fact these 4 really belong under that one. So I'm going to click here on the first one, then click on the last one while holding down the Shift key. So it selects all of them, and I drag it over until it's indented, and now those are all nested bookmarks. So this is the way that you quickly create a bookmark for a memo that you receive from opposing counsel. And that's how you create books the fast and easy way, is basically select, and then hit the modifier key, Control or Command, and then B. I already showed you how to nest the bookmarks. Sometimes it's a little tricky how you have to drag them around to get them in place, but you practice and you get better. Now, one thing that you sometimes need to do is rename a bookmark. Basically, if you right-click and then just choose Rename, it lets you rename it. I'm not going to rename that bookmark. You can delete bookmarks same way. Right-click, hit Delete. It'll delete it. You can have the bookmark wrap long text so that if this text here, see it says bookmarks need not follow page order. If I scrunch it in, it wraps. So it keeps all the bookmark. It keeps all of the information about the bookmark titles all in there. So that's an option under Properties. Is that right? Let's see. It's option under Options menu, Wrap long bookmark. So this is enabled, and that's why it's wrapping. So that's good. Now, we talked about splitting the pages by bookmark. And I said that the reason you would want to do this is important, and it is. So what happens is, and it's really, your choice is always going to be by top-level bookmarks. So what happens is, let's go back to that file that we just had open, the motion to dismiss. So if we wanted to break it up by each one of these things, this is a bad example, but let's just say that this was a separate page. So, or actually, I guess let's do it this way. So let's go to page 1. This is a motion to dismiss. So this is actually a separate document. So I'll say motion to dismiss. Then I'm going to go down page by page till I get to the memo. The memo is memo in support. And let's see if there's any other documents besides that. There's a notice of submission. Notice of submission. And there's an order. So there's actually 4 different PDFs, or 4 different documents in this single PDF. So if I want to split those up, what I do is I go to Tools, Pages, and I hit Split Document. And I want to split it by top-level bookmark. I want to set some options. Which folder do I want it to go in? I'm going to pick the folder. I'm going to say, let's just say the desktop, and I'll put it in the untitled folder. Actually, I'll create a new folder on the desktop. I'll call it test split output. Okay, so that's going to be the folder where we're going to send the stuff. And here's the key. You want to use the bookmark names for the file name. And in this case, it's not so important, but you're going to see why in a second. It is important. So we're back to this set thing. I hit OK. It's going to say, it takes a few seconds. I go over and look on my desktop and find the test output. And there are 4 documents. Each one of these PDFs is a separate document now. So now the reason why you want to use the name is because let's say that this was a contract, and the contract was dated January 15th of 2013. So we're going to type, so we're typing in January goes last, the day goes second, and the year goes first. That's because this document, and we'll call it contract. So then we get to the next document. We'll call this one a 2012-05-23 memo. Enter. And then the last document will say, let's say the date on the document. And of course, ignore the fact that these are the pleadings. Just pretend that these are actually different contracts. So let's say this one is 2011-01-01. So that one is the first of the year. So now if we say split those documents, and we split them by top level bookmarks, and we add them to a folder on the computer, and we choose, and we go back to the same one, and we say use the bookmark names for the file names, and we split. When we go look at that document or that folder, I'm going to eliminate the ones we just did. So it's put in the ones we just created, but look at what's happened is it's chronologically sorted those documents by the year, then after the year by the month, and then the day. So if you have one PDF that has many different individual documents that you need to split up, and this is very common because a client will send you a batch of documents and say these are the documents I have, and you'll realize, wow, that they're all together. I want them to be split up so I can manage them separately. This is the way you do it, and instead of just splitting them first and then having to go back and rename them, you just bookmark them all as you're going along, and it's actually faster and easier to do it that way than to do it individually, naming each one. So that is splitting by bookmarks, very important. You can create bookmarks by using the word styles. An important thing to know about bookmarks is that they don't need to be in the page order, so we tend to think of these as like that's the first page, and that is generally how it works, but you could drag a bookmark to a completely different location, and so this could be useful if you're in a deposition, and let's say you have one big PDF that has all of the documents or many of the documents that are being covered in the deposition, and the lawyer is asking questions and introducing different documents, and then you're just pulling up the document and making a bookmark, and then leaving them in the order in which he talked about them, but that's not necessarily the order in your PDF in which you have them in sequential order. So that's important to know. They don't have to follow the page order. Next, and we talked about this. We talked about commenting and using the highlighter. So this is pretty much the same thing in Acrobat. You can change the properties. You can do different things. You can delete several comments at once. If you have comments, they all appear over here in the list. And we talked about how you can click on a comment, and then you'll suddenly be taken to that page, and you can come back to the page you were on by hitting Previous View. So comments we've already covered really in the prior session. We're not going to talk too much about general text editing. This is something that you can do even with, well, you can do some editing of to flag and to do proofreading symbols and so forth. But Acrobat itself lets you edit text. So if this text here was something I didn't want so I have to go to Content Editing, and I can say Edit Text and Images. And so I could say, here's how editing works. Let's see what happens within. So I can type the word within, and all of a sudden it's adding the text. So you can add text and almost do word processing. It's almost that easy. Of course, you're not going to generally do that in Acrobat. But what that's useful for is if you realize you created a document from Word, you're going to file something and then the date is wrong or something's misspelled, you can quickly fix it using this text editing tool in Adobe Acrobat. So that's very, very useful. And the prior version in Acrobat 10 was pretty good, but the version in Acrobat 11 is much, much better. All right, if you get a PDF that somebody has simply scanned in, basically, let me unselect this, change to the hand tool. If you get a PDF and it's been scanned in, basically it's just an image file. You can't select text, you can't highlight text, because the computer doesn't know what text is there or that there's anything there. So you have to tell the computer, hey, look, this is text. Could you run through and look at everything and first of all figure out what the words or letters are so I can search for words, and also make it selectable. So if something is not selectable, you know it's not been made to be able to recognize text. So you have to run the function. Now OCR is another phrase for this, which stands for optical character recognition, and it's just jargon. But basically, it means run through, figure out what's text, and let me highlight it or search for it. With Acrobat, you can do that. So that's a function under the text recognition panel, and you can run it and say run it against everything in this file, run it against multiple files at once, or sequentially, and you can tell it if it finds something it's confused about to stop. And these are advanced functions that don't generally come up. They're pretty easy to avoid. So most people are going to run text recognition in the file, but sometimes you want to run it on multiple files. If it's a big set of pages, like 1,000 pages or hundreds of pages, you're going to want to run this at a time when you're not going to be needing your computer for a while, because it tends to take up a lot of the computer resources, and it's just kind of annoying to sit there and listen to the computer fans start humming. So it's best to run that at lunchtime or at nighttime. So that is how you get to use OCR. Now OCR will make some files bigger, and it takes extra time. So you don't really necessarily want to OCR all of your files, but you do want to OCR anything that you would want to be searching for information on. So basically any document in a case that you're working on, you want to be able to search against it, so you're going to want that to be made into a text recognizable PDF. Otherwise, like if you're just scanning in your pleadings and things like that where you're not really going to search, you probably don't want to go through the trouble to OCR all of that. Stamps are something that we covered in the prior session because Adobe Reader lets you create stamps. The main stamp that you want to have, as we talked about, is a signature stamp. So under the comment thing, if I go to signatures, there's my signature stamp, and I can put it in any document, scrunch it up, move it around, and so forth. And so having a signature stamp with a transparent background is incredibly useful, and this is, this covers how you accomplish that. Once you've created a stamp with the transparent background, because if it's not transparent, it'll look like this. This is an example of a transparent background. So once you've created it, in many cases, you might still have to flatten the PDF stamp onto the PDF so that because what happens is if I put my signature here, this isn't actually, this is just, this is here as a layer on top. So people could open up this document if they had Adobe Acrobat or even Adobe Reader and move this around or delete it, and so you don't want that. So if you sign something, you want it to be to attach to the PDF and permanently imprinted. And the way that you do that is you flatten it, and sometimes you have to get a separate tool for that. But if you're using the signature tool in Adobe Acrobat or Adobe Reader, that automatically flattens it, so that's not necessary there. Bates numbering is definitely crucial for lawyers, and this is an example of one of the capabilities that you need Adobe Acrobat Professional for. So you may remember we talked about there being two versions of Acrobat. There's Professional and Standard, and Standard costs $300, and Professional costs a little more than $400. And so you need at least one copy of Professional in your office, because to be able to add Bates numbers, that's what you need Professional for. So Bates numbers are incredibly useful for a lot of different reasons. The number one reason is it gives you an audit of what documents you've produced. So it's usually the person producing the documents that's going to Bates stamp them and Bates number them. And it's the stamping refers to, you might say, production set, produced on this date or whatever. But then you're going to want each page to have a Bates number so that you can say, here I gave you 25 or 67 or whatever the number is, different documents. I gave them to you as one big PDF. I can account for every single page that I gave you because I Bates numbered them sequentially. And if you say one is missing, I'm going to tell you you're wrong, because here's what I produced to you and it has this Bates number on it. So one, it protects you against somebody saying that you didn't produce a document that you produce. Number two, in auditability, it lets you know if later on, when that document gets produced at a deposition or a trial, and they say, oh, I show you this document, and you say, well, okay, is that my document or your document? And sometimes it matters because you want to know that they're looking at yours because yours is maybe a little different than theirs, or maybe you just want to know they got it from you. Maybe they don't have their own version, and early in the case when you're doing depositions, you realize they must not have their version because they're using your version. However it comes out, you kind of at least know this document that's being produced came out of my production. So you wouldn't know that if you didn't have a Bates number or Bates stamp on it, and so that's why it's useful. And there can be other reasons why Bates numbers and Bates stamping is useful, but those are the main ones. And so Acrobat lets you do it. It lets you do all kinds of different things where, so just as an example, if we were going to Bates number this document, which we won't, but we'll just walk through up to the part where we click yes. So you go to the Pages menu, you choose Bates numbering, add Bates numbers, tell it which file you want. We'll just say the files we have open, which is this one. We can say OK. Then we say OK, and now it's going to throw up a dialog box that's going to let us choose some things, like how big do we want the fonts to be when we put this in. Do we want them in black or do we want them in red? And I would recommend you pick a color other than black, because it might be put in a place where there's already black, and so it's nicer to see that it's red, and it's easy to do. So when you're looking at the PDF, you'll see that it's red, or if you have it printed out in color, you'll see it's red. So red, orange, some unusual color is usually better. You also, and you see here, now we could put the Bates numbering, usually you put it on the right or the left, but you could put it into the middle. And so let's just, for humor's sake, say test, and I'll put a dash, and hit OK. So it puts a code in there, and you can see already it's got it in red, but it's putting it on top of something that's already there in this document. So on page 1, it looks like it's going to write this onto text that's already there. So how we're going to fix that is we're going to go to the appearance options and check this box that says shrink the document to avoid overwriting text and graphics. So what it's going to do is it's going to scrunch this part up when we click OK, and now you see it's gone. So it's going to put this Bates number in it, something that will be completely clean. So you always want to enable that option, and then you want to save these settings so that you don't have to go do all this stuff again the next time. You just have your settings there. So this is, we have it there, but we actually want it So I can copy that over there. So we can put it on the right. We can put, maybe some Bates text over here. Production set number 1. So you can basically put stuff all over the document if you want at the same time. Once you say okay, it's going to run through and do that. It won't take it very long. It's pretty fast, pretty reliable. So that is how you Bates stamp a document. Now you can also, I think this is covered, you can delete the Bates number. So if you used Acrobat to create the Bates numbers and they're sitting there and you want to take them out, later on you could go back and say delete those Bates numbers. Also important for lawyers, and also only available in Acrobat Professional, is redaction. So redaction is where you go through a document that has sensitive information in it. This is something litigators are typically doing, and you say, okay, I don't want this is not something that I should have to produce unless there's a protective order, or even if with a protective order I shouldn't have to do it. So you can go to the Protection tab under the Tools menu, and you can say you want to mark an area for redaction. And when you do, it's going to say, okay, this is the first time you've ever done it. Here's how this works. Redaction requires 2 steps. 1, you mark it for redaction, so you go through and look at everything and decide what needs to be redacted, and then you come back and apply the redactions. And it will say they're not permanently applied until you select Apply Redactions. And it's going to keep reminding you of that, and it's going to make a strong effort to not let you mess this up, because if you just ran through and marked it but didn't apply them and then you produced it, the other side would be able to see it, and that wouldn't be good. So when you say mark for redaction, you can just select the area you want to redact, and by default it throws up a big black box. I'm going to right click, I'm going to choose Properties, and I'm going to say I don't really like the black box idea, so I want it to be red, let's say. So it's going to be red, and I want overlay text to appear, and I want it to fit the redaction area, and I want the text to say privileged. And then I'm going to hit OK. So now, actually, oh, the font color for that is the same, so I need to make it a different font color. I'll pick white. And OK. And now you see that the word privileged appears. So you can, there's a lot of little things you can do with redaction. You can even use the redaction feature to go around. I'm going to undo overlay text. You could use the redaction feature to go around and fix problems where there was marginalia that needed to be removed. And if you make everything white, then when you hover it over, you can see it's all white. So you can go through and use redaction that way, but usually lawyers are using it to redact and not let the person see it. So when you mark it, you go through, you do all that. Then when you apply the redactions, it'll run through and make all of those redactions that you marked become permanent. It will save the new PDF as whatever the file name was _redacted, so that you know that's the one that you redacted, and it will also obviously default to keeping the old unredacted version, which is good to have, because if you suddenly have to produce this stuff, you need to have one that's unredacted as well. So Acrobat takes a lot of steps to make it easy for you to mark things for redaction, to not mess up actually applying the redactions, and also even to do review, so that, so for example, if you wanted to have a junior lawyer go through, mark everything, and then have the senior lawyer come through and review everything, and then the senior lawyer would mark the things that they really wanted to redact, and they would apply the redaction. So there's review opportunities. You can also search for information and say search this PDF and find every pattern. So like there's all these patterns that you can look for, like single word or phrase, patterns like pick your pattern, phone numbers, credit cards, social security numbers, email addresses, and so forth. So there's lots of different ways to find and redact information in a PDF. Now, the next thing is metadata removal. This is where there's information in the PDF about, say, who the author was or some things that you might not want the other side to get a look at. And again, here you just go up to the Protection tab and click Remove Hidden Data, and it would go through and it can consider bookmarks, hidden data, comments. So you can basically very quickly, now I'm going to cancel out of this, you can very quickly run through a PDF and sanitize it essentially by taking out all this data. So it's not letting me stop. Okay, great. Stopping now. So we're not going to do that. And sanitizing is pretty much the same thing. So the next thing is find and advanced search. We talked about that last time, so that's not something we have to cover here. It works exactly the same way in Adobe Acrobat as it did in Adobe Reader. We talked about security already, which is setting the security so that when you open the document you need a password, or setting security so if you want to manipulate it you need a password. And really the only last thing to talk about in the intermediate section is this whole thing about PDF-A and what is a PDF-A. A PDF-A is a special kind of PDF that, and the A stands for archival, and the idea is that in the future, if you create a PDF, so if you create a PDF today, and in the future, let's say, 10 years from now, somebody wanted to read it, we know, because we've encountered this already many times, that sometimes a new program won't open an old file. So what what Adobe is trying to do is create a standard that will always be openable with any future version of Adobe Reader or Adobe Acrobat or any of the other third-party PDF applications. PDF-A is that standard, and federal courts are talking and probably are going to adopt that as the standard for e-filing in the future because, of course, they don't want to have things in their archival system that suddenly become unopenable because they're obsolete. So the trade-off in order to accomplish this is that things like the ability to play movies embedded inside of a PDF would be disabled. You can't embed audio or video. Hyperlinks in many cases would not be preserved, and so forth. So it's possible that some of these things will change because some courts or judges will find that the PDF-A standard maybe is curtailing some features that they want to see in a PDF. But for now, that's what's going on. Creating a PDF-A is very easy. Just go up to the File menu, choose File, Save As, and when you choose Save As, you can pick as a PDF-A. So it's pretty straightforward, pretty easy, not that hard to figure out. So that pretty much wraps up the key features of Adobe Acrobat. If you want to get all this information, you have to buy the book. The book is not available as a PDF itself. I got this PDF because when I wrote the book, the American Bar Association gave me this so that I could do demonstrations, but they have the copyright because I assigned it to them, so I don't get to decide what kinds of formats they sell, and they sell it only in paperback and also in ebook format, which is an iBook format, so you can get it from Apple iTunes for $29, and then you can buy it from the American Bar Association as a paperback book for $49, or if you're a member of the Law Practice Management Session, they give you a discount. But the book's pretty good. It covers all that stuff we just talked about, and it's kind of a great reference manual for Adobe Acrobat. So when you go out to practice law and or start using Adobe Acrobat, that is probably a good thing to get. So with that, I will say thank you all for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to email me at Ernie@paperlesschase. I'll be happy to answer them. And I hope that this has been very beneficial both today and in the future. So thank you all very much for attending.